We are live. So today we are going to be talking about, are you a control freak or a doormat? Aren't those great choices? Those are great options, right? Which are you? A control freak or a doormat? Let's figure it out, shall we? So we do have a handout. You can always, let me close that out. Let's make a noise here. We have a handout. Our handouts are always at hollywoodgatekeepers.net/free look, and you can download whatever it is that we're talking about. So today we're talking about, are you a control freak or a doormat? Now, obviously these are, obvious kind of cliche terms for certain behaviors. And so I want to talk about that today in terms of what are the traits of a control freak and what are the traits of a doormat. And typically most people have a control freak. Already volunteering, I'm a control freak. Most people have elements of both. And I for sure have, I have a control freak hat and a doormat hat for sure. So like most people have traits of both. But typically there are traits that go with being a control freak, and there are traits of being a doormat. And we're talking about this, as always, we like to talk about these kind of topics. It's twofold. One, to help improve your life, because we really feel that if you are living a life of contentment, of ease, of satisfaction, then you will be a much better reader, because you won't be bringing your angst and your life and your frustrations to the page that you are critiquing. Anyone who critiques things for a living, in my opinion, should spend their day when they're not critiquing, being happy and living life and having as much contentment as possible. Otherwise, you can start to become, hey, Doug, nice to see you. You can start to become really critical, overly critical. Because as a reader, your job is not to be critical. That is not your job as a reader. People, I think, have that mistaken thought that as a reader, your job is to be critical. As a reader, your job is to be supportive. You're trying to, it's a job of service. You're reading a screenplay and you are trying to give them as many tools as they can to make that screenplay better. You are trying to let a producer know if the screenplay works for what they're looking for. You are being that creative person that's helping them lift up. Hey, Joy. So as you learn to be a reader and as you read screenplays and critique screenplays, really what you're doing is pushing that writer, really trying to get that writer off the ground. We really feel that passionately here. So the more that we can help you find a balance of contentment in your life, to where, life is awful sometimes. There's trauma, there's drama, there's anxiety, there's all kinds of crap that happens in life. Life is beautiful and lovely and exciting and funny and playful. Life is all of that. So I don't even optimize for happiness. I don't want to be happy all the time, because it's not sustainable. It's just not possible to be happy all the time. And if you are happy all the time, it's like you're not getting the balance of things that make you feel great and things that make you feel bad, and where you can live in between, where you can learn to regulate those emotions and really stay in a place of contentment. So then, when things come at you, you can balance it a little bit better. So as we look at the trait, I'm going to go through what the traits are of control freak. I'm going to go through what the traits are of a doormat. And then we're going to walk through some steps to determine which you are. You'll know when you see the traits, but also really give you some tools to change if you see some of these traits. And because these are basically pretty negative traits on both sides. If you find that you have some of these traits, what can you do to start to regulate and mitigate some of them? So when you look at the traits of a control freak, number one, they have a little bit of, I got this, I know the answer, I'm right, you're wrong, black and white, this is how it is, that's a lie. They say that kind of thing. You're lying right now because you don't see it the way I see it. So it's very black and white, very much like, if it's this way, if it's not, it's this way, because that way's wrong, bad, shameful, whatever. Like, very much my opinion is the opinion. A control freak, because it's too scary to allow in something else that they can't control. If they make their own choice, and they can double down on that choice and not let in other people's opinions, then they can control the situation, or they think they can. So that is very much when someone who really thinks that it's my way or the highway kind of attitude, that is very much a control freak trait. Often they get frustrated with people for making excuses, or, oh, they roll their eyes at people a lot. They're frustrated with other people's behavior. They're constantly like, why can't they just get it together? Why can't they just do it? How hard could it be? Those kind of statements are often control freak statements of like, get it together. And sometimes even if people are saying that out loud about other people, I guarantee they're saying that, they're screaming that in their head about themselves. So anytime you see someone criticizing another person in a really negative way, most likely what they're seeing in that person is something they don't like about themselves. And so they're voicing it about that person. And so then inside they're being like, really, why can't I get it together? What's wrong with me? Those kind of statements are very much control freak statements of things that people will say. If you find that you're saying yourself to those kinds of things to yourself a lot, then there's some control things that we might want to play with about giving up. Also, they're not good team players, obviously, because if you walk in thinking my way or the highway, you're not going to be able to listen. They often feel like, I mentioned I did a play once where one of the best line ever was, "You're not hearing me, you're just hearing me through the thoughts filtered in your own head." Such a great line, right? Control freaks, that's where they live. They're so busy thinking about, this is what it is, this is how it should go, I know the answer to this is what I'm going to say next, I know better than you. They're thinking that so much that they can't really stop to listen and hear what the other person is saying. They interrupt people a lot. They can't quite let things go. And definitely, as I say these, like I'm immediately picturing times that I've been this way. So definitely I have some control freak traits for sure. I think most people have a little bit of both. So often they give unsolicited advice, as I'm doing right now. But it's solicited, sort of. You clicked on it. So I come up with topics that I think will help people. Do as I say, not as I do. But the idea is like, we're trying to come up with topics that help people. We hope it does. But a control freak will start a lot of sentences with, you know what you should do. And actually I don't feel that with these trains. I feel like do it or not, totally up to you. Not my circus. So, but they will constantly be constantly giving people advice that they don't want. It's unsolicited. They're saying, you might want this and that. And I'm sure, I can immediately think of people in my life that do that. So it's a very common thing because, again, it's that same sense of wanting to control it because you're out of control and this makes them uncomfortable. And the more that you can start to see, if you do that to people, if you find that you're like, or you see this in parents all the time, and it's so hard not to do when a child is struggling with something, just do it. They can't get the cap off and you just take it and do it. Instead of taking it and maybe loosening it a little bit and then allowing them to get the feeling that they did it themselves so that they can, learn that trait. And my coach teaches this, and he tells this beautiful story about helping his daughter who wanted to walk up and down. She's like 2 years old and she wanted to walk up and down a very slippery staircase. And so his everything in him wanted to go ahead of her and hold her hand and kind of yank her up the stairs. But instead, he stood at the step below her, let her hold onto the banister and put his hand out. Didn't even, so that she could balance by putting his hand on her hand and do it herself. And the more she did it, the less she needed to put her hand on his hand. And he talks about that in terms of coaching. It's a beautiful image, right? So this idea that, you don't try to control people, you try to be that support for people instead. So control freaks often have that thing of like, I got this, I'll just do it for you. They can't delegate. They have their hand up all the time in me. Oh, I got this. I call that helium hand, constantly hands. I got it. Control freak will volunteer for everything, will take on too much. Often they find that they're just like busy because they're constantly taking on all the stuff because no one can do it as well as they can. They won't delegate things. They often say things like, it's just easier to do it myself than show someone else to do it. This is a common thing in all of my coaching. I'm in a lot of coaching groups and I have a lot of other entrepreneurs that have businesses. And this is a very common topic that we talk about being able to see what you can take off your plate and give to other people, because it's really hard to take the time to do that. You have to find the right people to be able to give things to. And so, as we develop entrepreneurial businesses, we also develop tests and things where you go do this to make sure that the person can kind of regulate on their own. Otherwise, an entrepreneur will have a really hard time giving up something if they don't really know that the person can just run with it. So it's a really fine balance between being a control freak and being like, I got it, I'm not delegating, and being able to kind of let go and trust that someone else can do it maybe in a different way. They might get their different path than you took, but that they can do what you're asking them to do. So often this will create a lot of drama. Control freaks create drama because nobody really likes to be controlled. As much as we're going to move into the doormat role that often will acquiesce to being controlled, a lot of resentment will start to happen. And people, if you find that people express resentment towards you, if that's something, then you might want to check yourself to see if you have some control, you're trying to control them in ways. I was about to say control issues, but they're not really issues. These are just behaviors we've learned. We can unlearn them. So it's like, how can you gauge that and see? So if people are showing resentment towards you, you might be like putting a little bit too much control on them. So, and even with children, as they rebel and come back, it's that same up the banister, hold on to the banister idea, that giving them, loosening the leash a little bit so that they can start to explore them for themselves. So control freaks also are very, very exhausted. It's exhausting trying to control the world, really exhausting. Because really, if you want to control something, you want to control the way other people are behaving, the very first place to start to be able to do that is with yourself. Is starting to learn to control your reaction, your expectations. Often we have these expectations on people that aren't even fair. And we're going to get to how you kind of can determine that in a bit. But those are kind of the traits of a control freak, right? Now, as you look at a screenplay or someone writing it, if you double down on these traits, see what a rich character you can create. If you know that these are the traits of a control freak and you've decided you want to write a control freak, controlling character, here's the traits. Just give them those. And then on the flip side, you've got the doormat. So if you've got the doormat stamp on your forehead, you might be doing some of these. And that is that you don't like your daily tasks. That's a really big sign, like right out the gate. Doormats tend to say things like, I have to do this. They're Eeyore. I have to go. They want me to do this. And they want very martyry. Doormats can live in a place of victimhood and martyrdom, and which drives a control freak bananas, of course, because it's like, oh, it's just not my fault. They don't take responsibility. They don't take ownership for their lives or what they're doing. It's someone else's fault. If only they blame the system, they blame the people, they blame the very much a victim mentality in a doormat thing. So if you find that you're spending your day frustrated with your task that you don't like, that's not a time issue. A lot of people be like, I just don't have time. I don't have the time. I don't have the time. I can't write my screenplay. I don't have time because they did this and they did that and they're doing that. That's not a time issue. That's a boundary issue. That's not saying, look, I can't do that right now because I value this. And that's what we're going to get to, is it's a values issue. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. So if you also find, this is an interesting one, the doormat ones make me laugh a little bit. I don't know why, but because the things that are happening in your life. So if you find as a control freak, if you find that people are rejecting you a lot and you're lonely and you don't have any friends, that could be why, because you're trying to control everybody. Or if people are angry at you a lot, controlling people brings up more anger. Being a doormat, people respond to people being a doormat either by trying to rescue or by being kind of annoyed and frustrated. That's how we tend to respond to those two things. So that's kind of a clue. If you find that people are always trying to save you and help you, you might be demonstrating some doormatty type behaviors. If you find that people are angry and stop telling me what to do, right? You hear that kind of response a lot. I got it. If people do that, you might be doing some control freak things. So as a doormat, when people will take advantage of you all the time because you don't have any boundaries. And so doormats tend to be like, yeah, okay, fine, I'll do it. If you find that you don't really like your friends, that's a really interesting one to me, because sometimes when you're being a doormat is you're hanging out with people that you don't really care about because you're allowing them to take advantage of you. And you're kind of you're a little bit needy as a doormat. And so they give you something, a little something, and maybe even they rescue you a bit, or they double down on your neediness. And so that feels familiar and fun. So it's like you try to stay in that little bubble because it's just easier. And so if you find that you're avoiding conflict, that you feel guilty a lot, that you don't like your task, that you're like, I have to, all of those things are doormat qualities. Those are the things that will, and doormat, both control freak and doormat are super harsh words, because I want you to like, it's like a little bit of a, just want you to be like, oh, because no one wants to be a control freak and no one wants to be a doormat. However, we will couch those behaviors in all kinds of other things. I'm being helpful. I have to. Like, we couch it, it's not my fault. In like, well, I just couldn't do it myself. We couch those kinds of behaviors with other umbrellas. But by putting these like massive terms on them, I think it will kind of help people kind of look at it, really look at it, so that you can shake it up and make a difference in changing it. And if you're a doormat, it's exhausting. See what I did there? It's totally exhausting to be a doormat because the world's on your shoulders. Blah, it's on the doormat. And it's exhausting to be a control freak because nobody does it right. I love this topic because it's so great because all of these things like fit together in such a great way. So when you're writing characters or looking at a screenplay, you might take some of these traits. If you're reading a screenplay and the characters are just kind of mediocre or the dialogue isn't quite ringing true, by looking at what these traits are, like dialogue can come up more easily because you can kind of think about, oh, what would a doormat say? What would a control freak say? And even though that's a really extreme way of looking at it, the dialogue that will come out of their mouth will probably be pretty authentic, because you can easily, I mean, come on. You're doing it right now. I know you are. You're thinking of people that do this, even if you don't do it yourself. You're thinking of people that try to control you. You're thinking of people that you hang out with that you don't really like. I know that these things come up. And so it's really like trying to embrace, exactly, Sheree, embrace it all. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We fluctuate between the two depending on the circumstance. Absolutely. I think we all carry both traits. I think healthy people carry both traits. The trick is looking at those traits to see in the areas of your life, if you have areas of your life that you're not very happy about, or not that we're, like I said, we don't optimize for happy, but if you're doing things like if you wake up in the morning and you think about your day and you're like, oh, and that's your day, or you think about your day and you're just like, there's so much anxiety, some of these traits are sneaking in there, and how can we mitigate and regulate them? And here's how you do that. So how do you balance both of these traits? And then also in characters, when you create conflicts and you have them coming from both of these things, then you can create like really interesting scenes when you start to balance it, right? So, so the first thing to do is discover your values, because really what is happening here is the values are skewed in ways that are not beneficial for people. So, like, for instance, like I said, if you are running around like a chicken with your head cut off, both of these people can do this. A control freak does it because I'm going to control it all. I'm going to do it all so that I don't have to rely on anyone. I'm just going to do it all. And that's pretty much impossible. So that's one. So they're running around because of that. A doormat is running around because, oh, I have to go do this, and so makes me do that. I have to take care of my kids. I have to do the laundry, and I have to. So both people say, there's no way I can write my screenplay. I'm too busy having to do all this, and I'm too busy having to do all that. See how it works for both. The end result is that neither person writes their screenplay, or whatever it is. If there's something that you start your business, or you want to start a coaching practice, or whatever it might be. If you're trying to start something, write something, act in something, whatever your creative person, whatever your thing is, these two, inner turmoil things will stop you from doing it, because both of those come from a place of value. What's happening there is the task, they're busy doing all of these tasks because they value something. So for instance, if you find you're not writing your screenplay, there's two ways to look at this. If you find that you're not doing something that you want to do, or accomplishing something that you want to accomplish, you need to use the look method to look. I mean, that's the look method. You look from a place of love, you be open for opportunity, and then you kick whatever's stopping you to the curb. That's the look method, right? So you're going to look at whatever it is. Really look at it. Like, I want to do this thing. You look at what it is. Then you look at, what did you do yesterday? You really look, like even write it down for a week. Write down, how did you spend your day? What did you do from 10 to 12, from 12 to 2? Like really map it out. What did you do? Because what you'll see is often what you're doing every day is not congruent with what you want. So you want this thing. We're just use writing your screenplay because it's such a good one. I want to finish a screenplay, but I spent yesterday, and then comes all the noise, right? Then comes all the, I spent yesterday taking care of all the things that somebody wouldn't do, or I spent yesterday because I have to take care of my kids. Well, what's happening here is that you're just you value taking care of your children. That's not bad. So one part of it is there's a reframe. If you're doing things and you're being negative about things that you have to do in order to take care of your children or your spouse or something, and there's things that you're just valuing family. Give yourself love for that. That's not a bad value. So it is like, and we can all judge what's good and bad in value. So I don't want to, like, to me, taking care of your family is a great value. So if you have a family, if you have children, it'd be nice if you took care of them. So some people don't, though. Some people don't value that. And they're constantly trying to figure out ways to pawn off their children. Like, that's also another thing. And if that's the case, then that's your value. You value whatever it is you're doing instead. That's fine. Hopefully you're pawning them off to someone who does value that. The children are still getting a really beautiful experience. That's totally possible. You can have someone else, you can have a grandma or daycare or something that's taking care of your kids, and it's beautiful and they do a great job and it works out because you're valuing, or you feel that you need to do this thing instead. It's like, it's really about determining what that value is and reframing it so that you don't beat yourself up about it. You just say, well, I need to have this job. Let's say you have a job that you don't like. Well, that job is providing you security. So being able to look at that job and say, I value this job because it provides me the security I need in order to live my life or to take care of things or whatever it might be. So part of it is shifting the value about the things that you're doing once you've tracked everything so that you don't beat yourself up about it. You just realize, okay, that's why I'm doing that. So you start to look at your tasks and you start to pin a value to those tasks. Why do I watch TV for 12 hours straight? Why am I binging on this thing? What you're valuing there's so many things it could be, but really just dig into your emotions and decide. And so in the handout today, it walks you through this, and then there's a huge list of values. And I'll just kind of read a few of them off. There's like accountability, action, awareness, balance, beauty, boldness, calmness, cleanliness, closeness, commitment, compassion. You see this: humor, humility, hopefulness, gratitude, greed, growth, happiness. There's so many: freedom, fun, understanding, being unique, supporting people, success, structure, strength. So safety. There's so many different values. And so when you look at the things that you're doing, pin a value to them, because then you'll realize, oh, and it might help you kind of relax about some of it. But then the next step is to write down, what are the values? So I want to finish my screenplay. What do I need to value in order to do that? You need to value writing. That means you need to sit down and write. So that's got to be one of them, or storytelling, or however you want to couch it that rings true to you. Storytelling, creating project, movies, Hollywood, whatever. If there's a value that you want to put in there, whatever works for you. Often we also will have a judgment on a value. So greed is good. Such a famous line, right? And that's why that line, people really resonated with that line, because so many people have decided that greed is bad. They put a negative value on greed, and he's trying to flip that in that big speech in Wall Street, saying greed is actually good. Greed for life, greed for acceptance, wanting things is a good thing. So often we have wealth or money. Money is a good one because it's so polarizing, where if you value wealth or having money in your life, there might be some mind trash in there saying, oh, that's not right. That shouldn't be your value. That means you're greedy or, put all kinds of bad things on it. No, it doesn't. Not if you're using that's your thing and you want to have a lot of money so you can support your family and take care of your kids and take them on trips you want to go on and create businesses where you can help people and start a nonprofit. And there's all kinds of reasons to have wealth that are amazing and spectacular. And so if that's one of your values, that's totally fine. And often we will push away a value because we have some mind trash, what I call mind trash about it. We'll decide, oh, that's not a good value to have, so I'm just not going to go there. And then we wonder why we're broke all the time, because we haven't decided that money's a value. And so it's like, if you find, you just have to identify what it is for you and then pick the values that you want. And then you've identified your tasks. You've identified what values that you hold on to that are reflected in those tasks. Then you identify what it is that you want. And then you identify what are the values I would need to have in place in order to do the thing that I actually want. And once you determine those values, then you can start to say, okay, what am I going to do today that's going to match that value? So for example, I have health as one of my values because I realized that I was neglecting my health, and they can change over time. So they change. Like I originally, when I first learned this technique, I had action. Taking action is one of my values. I took it off my list because there's no way I'm ever going to not do that. That is such a core value that I have that I will never not. I'm the guy that takes action. That's just kind of so much a part of who I am that for me to try to eliminate that value would be like taking out my spine. It's a huge part of just my makeup. It's like I like to act on things, whatever it is. So I don't even have that as a list of one to work on because I know there's no, I don't have to think about that one. So there are certain ones that we know that we don't really have to think of. I put health because I realized my action was overshadowing my health. So now I know, okay, I need to do certain things. I want to work out every day. I have play as one as well. I want to dance every day and have a sense of playfulness and try to find those things so that things that I feel like were kind of lacking that I wasn't paying that close of attention to because I looked. I now, every single day in my journal, I write, what am I going to do toward that value? And I have 5 altogether. So what are the things that you want? What's the life that you want? What are the values that are going to reflect that? Or what is something that's missing in your life or that you're neglecting? Like I was neglecting my health. So I put that as my value so that I could really start double downing on what am I going to do today to create that value. So the thing that ends up happening, that's why habits are so difficult to change because it's not based on, I have to change this daily task. I have to eat this thing. It's like, no, I need to be healthy. And so then when I go to wanting to eat something, I'm weighing more, okay, am I going to value what I say I value? And one of the things that you can do is once you think about the thing that you want, so let's say you decide, I want to be an Oscar-winning screenwriter, think about, okay, what does an Oscar-winning screenwriter do all day, every day? Like, what is their life that makes them that way? What do I need to do? Who do I need to be in order to step into the thing that I want? Like, what are the things I need to do to be that person? And then that will create the values, and then that creates the tasks. So by switching the narrative to being about your values instead of being about controlling people or being a doormat, really what it is about finding those values. So if you find that you have people in your life that you aren't relating to, or that you find people are taking advantage of you, if you don't really like the people that you're around, it would be really interesting to find out what are they valuing. And it would be my guess that you're not lining up on that level. You don't line up with your values. So it's a really good conversation to have with significant others, with people that are important in your life. Like, find out what are their values, because then when they do things, you'll be like, oh, that's why they do that. Suddenly their behavior will make so much more sense to you because you'll understand, oh, they're doing that because they value that thing. So, and the one I like to use is a kind of a good one, because it's like if someone values freedom, for instance, they say, oh, freedom is one of my values. Sometimes people look at freedom as meaning like they see that in sort of this grand, big way. But really, a freedom can mean, oh, that's why when I say, where were you? You get so upset because you value freedom. And my saying like, you're 5 minutes late, or where were you? It triggers that your value of freedom is being encroached. And so you might come back a little stronger. If someone else doesn't value freedom, they'll be like, sorry, I was late, I did blah, blah, blah. Like it won't trigger them because freedom wasn't one of their values. So when you are having, and usually when you have an argument with someone, it's not even about the topic. That's not what you're arguing about. You're arguing about the value underneath. And if you're arguing about, and I love this, so many people, I just attended a coaching thing where couples were arguing and one person valued affection and touch, and they needed that. There's love languages, a whole other thing where it talks about this, but they needed that affection and touch. The other person felt like there was something about that was degrading. And so they were in this weird, like when they realized, oh, we're just valuing things different, it really made them give each other a break. And so by understanding the people in your life and what their values are, you can give them a break. You can also, by understanding what people's values are, start to kind of what they call improve your five, or get the people that are in your life on a daily basis to match your values. And it's been so fascinating as I join these masterminds and I do these coaching things, and I'm starting to work with all these people that have the same values as I do naturally, because that's what drew us to the group. Kind of like you in here. A lot of us will have some similar values about being creative or writing or those kinds of things. That's why we resonate with each other. When you see someone go, I found my tribe, that's what they're saying. They don't know it, but that's what they're saying. We have the same values. And within that, we're all going to have different values within that as well. And we'll have polarizing things between control freak and doormat, even in our tribe, because there are certain values by being in this community that we share. And that's why we resonate with each other. And then within that, there's going to be the ones that we don't share, which is totally fine. So the more you can understand it, relax about it, don't beat yourself up about it, don't beat other people up about it, the more you can come from a place of love and connection and security and like really getting that across, the better it will be. So I hope that makes sense. Yay, I'm so glad, Claudia. This is like, the whole idea of this is to create these characters that will come from these really significant places and also create a better life for you. That's what we want. That's what we're driving towards. We just finished we're launching a whole new thing to help you finish your screenplay. And this is what's kind of sparking these conversations. We'll have more about that next week. But these are the values that we want to get across. These are the ideas that we want to get across. So you're not a control freak. You're not a doormat. Hopefully, if there are traits in either of those that are holding you back, you can start to look at your values and you can start to change those just incrementally. Tiny little teaspoon approach. You do a tiny little shift, you will be amazed at the ripple effect. Sometimes it'll be negative. You'll start to change and the people in your life will be like, what are you doing? No changing allowed. Stop that. And sometimes what will happen, which is beautiful, which is already happening if you're in this group, is you'll start to attract the people that share that thing with you. And it's really exciting. So it's super cool. Make sure you get lots of sleep as you do this, because it can be even small incremental changes of value. You're changing something at a core level, and that can be hard on your system in general, because your body says, what we did yesterday, we got through it, we survived that, we need to do that again today in order to survive. So when you shake that up, it can be more exhausting than you might think. So treat yourself with love, care, respect, joy, play. And we will see you next week. We'll talk to you guys soon.